Well, good morning and welcome to All Falcons with Scott Kennedy and Nick Kendall. We are your co-hosts on Wednesday mornings. We've been doing this at 10 a.m. on Wednesdays and Fridays. We'll probably ramp it up a little bit more as we start getting a little more comfortable in doing this. Want to take a look at several things and welcome in. I know Dave, our boy Dave is already in the house. US Dave, thank you for chiming in with a comment. Always appreciate you being here, but we're going to talk several things. One of the things I want to talk about is Richard Sherman into the NFC South, going to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and not just what that means for the team and what it does, but what that signifies to the rest of the league, and especially to a team like the Falcons, who are sitting there strangling in salary cap problems. Say, how do they keep bringing in these players? And we can touch on that a little bit. I want to review a little bit of the New York Giants game. What went well, what they can improve on, what still looks pretty bad. And then we'll take a first look at the Washington football team. It's actually easier for me, Nick, to say, because of such a soccer person, it's easier for me to say Washington football team than probably most people, because, the idea of a mascot just sounds really silly. When you start looking around the world, you're like, let's see. There's sort of mascots like Manchester United is they're kind of known as the Red Devils, but they're not the Manchester United Red Devils. That sounds kind of silly.
Yeah.
So but we got all kinds of folks coming in already on YouTube, and as Facebook starts streaming up, that'll probably get going too. But Dave, appreciate you being here. DBA coming in. Good morning, guys. And Tommy Simmers, our thoughts and prayers are with you. Hopefully you're in good health and the positive test is as mild as it is for most people and doesn't have the effects that it can on the few of you that are very unfortunate. So may you be amongst the lucky. Jeremy is here. Appreciate you being here, Jeremy. So got a good group in the chat already coming in. And as you're coming in, if you're coming in late or watching after the fact, hit us up with questions. Put them into the comments. I am pretty much OCD about responding to any type of direct messages to me on YouTube, email, text, etc., etc. So, Nick, Richard Sherman, you I'm assuming you got to see him a lot as a Seattle person, not a Seattle fan, but a Seattle person. He's 33 years old, but at 6'3", 395 pounds, quick twitch was never really his thing, was it?
No, never really his thing. He's more of a intelligence player out there with size. That's why he fell to the 5th round. He's pretty scheme dependent too, so I'm interested to see how he really fits with Tampa. I've always thought he was pretty, one of the best cover 3 corners there's been in the last 15 years, but I don't think they play that much pure cover 3 that you saw in Seattle. So I'm not an expert on Todd Bowles' defense, but it's much more blitz-centric, leaving guys on islands in the back end, unless they're playing the Chiefs, and then they copied the Broncos game plan, and it worked pretty well. But, he's a big name, but, man, cornerback, if there's any position, we kind of talked about it yesterday with the wide receiver position, talking about, like, Golden Tate or whatever, where they're like, oh, my gosh, he's 32 years old. Like, he might as well be in the home, right? That goes twice for cornerback. That's probably the position where, you have to be so twitched up, because not only is it probably the most athletic position out there just in terms of pure athleticism, but they have to be reactive. So it's, I don't know, man. We saw Richard Sherman last year. He was fine, but I don't think this is much more than a stabilizing move for that defense versus a talent addition.
You think he probably could move around a little bit, maybe the nickel where he's almost playing a hybrid safety type role, let him freelance just a little bit could be an option for him. But as far as, what does this mean? What does it mean that Richard Sherman's going to, especially for Atlanta Falcons, who are scraping the bottom of the barrel of the free agent pile and bringing in guys that, I've never heard of. Man, I've heard of everybody at one point or another. They're bringing them in for tryouts. And I'm like, I don't know who these guys are. Come on. Good job scouting if they can turn into a player for you. But, they're bringing in Richard Sherman, and the Falcons are bringing in, 5 guys yesterday, and I don't remember if I recognized, but maybe one name of those 5. So why are you what does that mean? Why are the Falcons having such trouble? And meanwhile, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are able to bring in a player like Richard Sherman. I looked it up as the salary cap ramifications. We've talked about the Falcons being a under the having salary cap troubles for a long time. And Camilo, appreciate you being here. Yes, it's a Falcons page. And I wanted to talk about Richard Sherman and how him going to Tampa affects the Falcons and why it's a little disheartening that Tampa can get a guy, 5-time Pro Bowler like Richard Sherman, while the Falcons are bringing in practice squad players off the waiver wire. We talked about Thomas Dimitroff and some of his really bad contracts and, front loading, back loading, big signing bonuses. And the dead cap number, which is money that is counting against your cap for players that are no longer on your team, whether you've traded them or cut them. Usually it happens when those players are no longer worth what you're paying them, and you're better off just taking the dead cap hit and you get rid of them. The dead cap number for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is just $3.5 million. On a $180 million cap, it's just 3.5. What that means is they're putting their money on the field. They're not paying other players. So let's take a look. I know we got some, several Denver Broncos fans that come in here and watch. The dead cap number for Teddy Bridgewater over at Carolina is big. It's a big number, because they are picking up a majority of his salary while he's over there, and they gave him a signing bonus, et cetera, et cetera. Or they pick up the New Orleans contract. He may have dead cap numbers on other places, but the point is it's only $3.5 million. The Falcons' dead cap number is $23.3 million. Yeah. So they've got almost 15% of their salary cap allocated to players that aren't even there, that aren't helping. So Tampa's putting their money on the field. The other part of this is we saw this with, and we're not used to it as Falcons fans, but Nick, players are willing to take a little bit of a discount to come and play for a championship.
Yeah, I mean, Florida, right, is a good spot for a lot of players. Not only, it's not just for the old people going to retire, but the no state income tax is very helpful for bringing in some of those players looking to maximize their earnings there. Washington has that as well, which is interesting. But that's
no, it's not. Who runs the country?
Yeah.
No, that's not surprising at all. Come on.
Well, anyway, going to get a chance to go play with Tom Brady. Obviously, we saw it, just speaking from personal history, the Broncos, when they had Peyton Manning, guys willing to take a slight discount to come in and play with Peyton Manning. People are doing that with Tom Brady. And also, I think there's a Bruce Arians effect too. He's a player's coach. Players rave about him, love him. So it's players are going there right now trying to get a ring, but also trying to maximize their career and just be on as good of a team as possible where they can enjoy themselves. So now, obviously, they're not signing like guys getting their first big contract to team-friendly deals. It's more of those veterans that have already gotten the big contract or whatever that are looking to maximize the back end of their career.
And who made a living? Who won 6 Super Bowls like that? The New England Patriots were like that all the time. They're always bringing in guys like, how'd they get that guy? It's like, well, he was willing to play for $2 million instead of $4 million for this team because he was going to go get a Super Bowl ring playing for the New England Patriots. It's not always about the money when you're already well compensated. So 7 figures is still a lot of money. Was it, how much more do you need at that point? So we'd rather go play for a team that's got a chance to win a championship as opposed to, and I referenced the Falcons in the long history of the Atlanta Falcons. There's never been a period of sustained success except for, this is actually pretty close. New Falcons fans are kind of spoiled that this is, going to be 4 losing seasons in a row. I'm like, dude, I grew up in the 80s. It wasn't just losing, it was bad losing. Yeah. But Tony Gonzalez was one that immediately springs to mind as, an all-time great that came to Atlanta to come play for a championship. And, he got there or really close, didn't quite get over the hump, but he helped Atlanta get to an NFC championship game and had a lot of good years and winning seasons with Tony Gonzalez. So that's the difference in levels. One, it's management. You got $23 million in dead cap money. That's, like I said, that's about 15%, maybe a little bit, but right about 15% of your money that you're basically paying that's not going to your team. It's going to somebody else. Julio Jones is big on that. Desmond Trufant is big on that, but it's not just those two. The list of dead cap numbers, it's like 12 or 15 deep on Spot Rack if you check it out.
It might get long too with Matt Ryan, right? That's the inevitable.
Well, and that's a good point, Nick. Well, why can't Atlanta move? Why was moving Matt Ryan not possible this year?
Yeah, I mean, maybe they couldn't even function with that amount. They restructured his contract, so there'd be even more dead money on it. But I'm definitely somebody who's, my philosophy on this would be, take your medicine. If you're going to do it all at once and just, cover your eyes and get through it. But it's unfortunate, and it puts him in a tough spot. You wanted to talk Richard Sherman, too. We hadn't really talked from a Panthers perspective. It's not the Richard Sherman cornerback move. That's the one that I would be envious of. CJ Henderson for a 3 going to the Carolina Panthers where they already have JC Horn. I mean, with the Panthers cornerback play, obviously you have AJ Terrell, but you need 3 good corners. You need 3 good corners. And you could have gotten CJ Henderson for, hell, I would have offered more than a 3. And obviously, I don't know what's going on off the field with him at Jacksonville. If he's a real problem, then, maybe not. But that's the one.
That's crazy. I mean, that's when's the last time we saw a top 10 guy go in under, just after his first year for a 3rd rounder without an injury involved or something like that. That's that one's a little weird.
There's something weird there, but I mean, getting the chance to pair somebody like that with another top 1st round pick in Terrell, but now you have the Panthers doing that with JC Horn. Oh, he did have the foot injury, but that's more of a 4 to 10 year type of move. And that's something that I would be looking. That's the type of move as the Panthers. It's like, okay, well, we're getting youth, we're getting upside, we're stacking a premium position for a discount. That's the shots that this team needs to be making. Also, his guaranteed money's over in Jacksonville with that signing bonus. So
that's a fairly low risk, high reward type of move. And now there's another talented player coming into the NFC South, and Carolina's flying right now. They're off to a very good start. Off to a slower start, but got their first win last week was the Atlanta Falcons. And, watching the game, there's different levels of good. What's a good team? This team's better than that one. And as I'm watching this game, you're thinking, okay, the Giants are more talented. They've got better players, but they're not a better team because they keep making stupid mistakes.
Yeah.
So, that's your idea of, what's good. Well, they're not good. Yeah. They're not better because they're making more mistakes than you are. And the Falcons played a pretty clean game against the Giants and let the Giants beat themselves.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the overall statistics here, and based on advanced analytics and whatnot, the Giants probably should have won this game. Now, that doesn't mean anything because the Falcons did win, but the Giants had more first downs. The Giants had more total plays. The Giants had better efficiency on 3rd down. The Giants had better yards per play, better yards per pass attempt, better yards per rush attempt, better possession, equal on turnovers. The big one that stands out is they doubled up the Falcons on penalties. So 8 penalties compared to 4, and also red zone attempts. Falcons 2 for 2, the Giants 1 for 3. So those are some key metrics where it comes out there. But overall, this was a pretty even game. Falcons came out on top, but looking at peripheral from the box scores, it was a coin flip.
Yeah, and watching the game, it felt like they were moving it up and down. But then, it's not just that they had those penalties; it's when they had those penalties. They'd have those penalties in the red zone, or a muff snap, or a blown assignment. And Grady Jarrett comes in with a big sack and knocks him out of field goal range, or forces him to kick a field goal.
Love Grady.
It was just the mistakes, the timeliness of them were they were game changers. And Camilo coming in here again, Camilo. I'm confident Fontenot will have us back in contending in about 2 years. I confident for me is tough, having been an Atlanta sports fan for 40 years. Confidence is tough to say, but I also think that he is the right guy for this job. I've been very happy with the moves he's made. The only thing I would quantify on this, though, is I don't blame Terry Fontenot. Some of the chat was saying, why are the Falcons fans so impatient? Part of it was because of the rhetoric that they were speaking in the offseason, which was, hey, we're here to win. This isn't a rebuild, blah, blah, blah. And I don't mind them saying that, because you don't want to lose the team right away. And you don't want the fan base to say, oh, well, we got a new coach, a new GM, and they're not even trying this year. Let's turn it off. But this is a rebuild. It's absolutely a rebuild. And every move they've made, I always say, don't watch what sports people, or really people in general, say. Watch what they do. Because you're never going to find out the truth in public from what they say in public, because they're making moves. They don't want to show their hand. It's worse than poker. They don't call it lying. They call it coach speak. So I think Fontenot's doing a good job too, and they got really, really creative in New Orleans with the salary cap, and the Falcons could use some of that right now too. Couple of standouts who, on the offensive side of the ball, when the Falcons needed to make plays, there's one guy in particular for me that sticks out. I'm not even going to say it. I'm going to hear you say it because it was obvious enough that you should be able to say his name.
Well, I want to just give a quick shout out to Chris Lindstrom. My eyes always go to the offensive line, and he played like a first-round pick in this game, especially considering the level of competition with the Giants' interior defensive line duo with Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams. You're not going to find much better than that duo in the league, and I thought Chris Lindstrom had a very good game. So, we got to appreciate good offensive line play when we see it. The guy for me that really I was very thankful for because he won me fantasy football matchup this week, Cordell Patterson. I've been really appreciating his usage. Maybe not the most efficient runner of the football. And then that, granted, your running game is only as good as the offensive line, and you need to be solid in the interior. And Lindstrom was good. The other guys, Jalen Mayfield especially, not great. But Patterson is an extension of the run game via the quick pass game. I love it, man. And this is literally what I would do in Madden all the time. I'd get a really good, like a David Johnson type, who I played high school football against, absolutely kicked our butt. But David Johnson, flex him out into the slot or just a little swing pass, and he's against a linebacker. Good luck. And especially Blake Martinez, he's out for the year now, but not the most fleet of foot. So I really like what Cordell Patterson's doing for this team. He's finally kind of found a niche role after being a first-round pick and trying to find a home for all these years. And I've been really appreciative of him, and he's been my only waiver wire pickup so far in fantasy, and he's been helping me win back-to-back games now. So good job, Cordell.
He's an X factor for sure, and I like the way they're using him and the way he's used in so many ways. I mean, he's the gunner on punt coverage. Bobby coming on Facebook said the play by Grady was not a mistake; it was his great ability. Absolutely, and let me rephrase. I like this is why I like this format. It gives you an idea to clarify. I'm at the negative plays. So the negative plays that went against the New York Giants all seem to happen in crucial situations, whether it was a penalty, a botched snap, or a sack. In that case, Dante Fowler comes up with a big play also that is huge in crucial situations. So in crucial situations, the negative plays that went against the Giants all seem to happen when they mattered the most. And that was a fine margins between two not really very good football teams that looked like they were 0-2, and one cleaned it up. One of the teams played fairly mistake-free football. It wasn't all that exciting, but you know what? I'll take a nice, clean win over watching them move up and down the field and shoot themselves in the foot like the Giants did any day. So appreciate the comment, Bobby, and thanks for calling me out on that.
Yeah, another guy I wanted to give a shout-out to on the offensive side of the ball. I thought Mike Davis also had a solid game. Not as dynamic as Cordell Patterson, but I think you guys got two pretty good backs there in the Falcons. And if that team can start to get the offensive line together, and this was probably, dare I say, their best performance on the offensive line. I think Caleb McGarry was probably the worst one, just from a one-time through watch, not on the non-coaches film of this, but overall it was pretty good, especially considering the competition. So that's the formula to win for this Falcons team right now. And I saw somebody say Matt Ryan is washed in here. I wouldn't say he's washed, but he's definitely somebody who he has to have the protection and the run game to help him out. And that way you can stretch the field vertically as well. And so far the Falcons hadn't done that. This is a game where you started to see maybe it come together. And that can only be a good thing for this team.
And JC checking on YouTube. Appreciate you checking in and being part of the chat this morning. All Falcons. We got to about 10:23 a.m. on Wednesday morning. We go about 30 minutes on Wednesday mornings, and as this show grows, and it will help with you by hitting those like, subscribe, share buttons, and all that type of stuff, and telling more people about it. We'll grow the show, and we'll start doing more things with it. And it's a big start with you. Tommy Simmer's coming in. Pitts is looking human as well. Actually, I thought I was going to say something else at first. Sort of. I mean, everybody is when you're offensive, when you don't have time to pass. But they doubled up Kyle Pitts right away. He had two guys on him pretty much the whole game, and I firmly believe that you still find a way to free up your best players. But again, your offensive line you can only get so creative when your offensive line is a negative. And while they're playing better, it's still not an average. It's not still not even an average unit at this point. He caused so many problems though with the double teams and stuff that the first touchdown, he's lined up on the left, just inside the slot, and he goes outside, and the safety kind of trails with them. And Olamide Zaccheaus just fills right in that spot, wide open touchdown pass. So maybe the world's best decoy right now, but he drew a key pass interference penalty in the end zone. He had a big catch on the game tying touchdown drive, and he had the 25-yard reception that that set up the game-winning field goal. So kind of the polar opposite of the Giants, who looked really good for most of the game, except in the crucial moments where they would have a negative play. Kyle Pitts was quiet for 3+ quarters and then was a beast when it mattered the most in the fourth quarter. And I'll take that guy every time.
Yeah, and I want to give a shout out to Kyle Pitts as far as his competency in blocking as well. That's something that, he didn't bring him in to be a blocker. Obviously, he's one of the most dynamic athletic profiles from the tight end position we've seen since Vernon Davis, probably. And I think he's held his own out there. There was a play, I think it was last week, though, where he was one-on-one blocking Jason Pierre-Paul, and he did it, man. So that's really a good shout out to him. The tight end position is an extension of the offensive line, if you can use it that way. I know that Arthur Smith wants to use it that way. And the Falcons got some work to do on that offensive line before I think you can truly unleash him as much as you'd like to from the offensive line. Right now, he needs to stray back a little bit and help sometimes. But he's, it takes 3 years for a tight end position, and they're really trying to figure it out there. So I'm not worried about Kyle Pitts at all. He's going to figure it out. And I think as the season progresses, he's going to get more and more involved, and he's going to.
And who had the other touchdown catch? Lee Smith. Lee Smith.
Yeah.
Lee Smith. I had the other touchdown catch. I think he had 3 catches in this game. He's gone seasons without 3 catches. And what was interesting to me, have you ever seen a play where they run a tackle eligible and they throw it to the offensive lineman?
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen those plays? For a touchdown, they run it. They say, okay, number 73, Nick Kendall is lined up and is reported as eligible. Now he's an eligible receiver, and every once in a while, throw to that guy, and he gets mobbed by his fellow offensive lineman after he scores, just because hey, that's so awesome, you got to score, blah blah blah. That's exactly what happened to Lee Smith.
Essentially,
Lee Smith gets mobbed by the offensive lineman because when I was at practice and they're breaking up into warm-ups for individuals, Lee Smith went with the OL. That's what kind of receiver he is. So Pitts opened up some other things for some other players. And as he figures this out and figures out how to work his way into coverages, human maybe on the stat sheet, but he is above human when it comes to his physical ability. And that's one of the reasons why they took him. The defensive side of the ball, Foye Oluokun was everywhere. I thought he played a terrific game. And whenever I saw Grady Jarrett flash, I'd go back and look at the play, and he was lined up over the guard, not on his outside shoulder, but either straight up or just inside. And man, I want Grady Jarrett to be lined up closer to the ball. I don't know if it's possible in the scheme and with the personnel they have, but he is so good when he is in the middle. And he's just okay when he's out farther with the tackle. So gives him a chance for the tackle and the guard to double him up, which frees up some other people in theory. But Grady Jarrett on the inside, where he can bust that swim move and split the center guard, he's a force. He's absolutely a force. Yeah,
no, he is one of my favorite players. I remember screaming at the TV in the 2014 draft. Does that ring a bell? I wanted the Broncos to take him in the second round. I was a huge fan of Grady Jarrett at Clemson. They ended up taking Ty Sambrailo. You guys know about him.
Went 5. He was a 5th round pick.
He was like the 2nd overall pick in the 5th round, so it was early. But he's like, he doesn't.
But still,
he's winning.
He got passed on a lot.
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy to me.
He's too short.
And he doesn't fit every scheme too, which is probably one of the reasons he fell down. But you got to figure out a way to maximize that guy. And I know you're talking about him not fitting the scheme as much, but how often actually are the Falcons playing in base packages, base defense? Because once you get into, everybody runs a version of that 4-2-5, right? That nickel defense is probably the heaviest used, and that's the time when he's going to kick inside the guard. So as long as you are stout enough on first down and you're not constantly at like 2nd and 2 or 3rd and 1, Grady Jarrett's going to get a chance to be maximized still, in my opinion. Now, if you are playing still in that 4-2-5, more of a two capping system there, where your defensive linemen have to remain very, very disciplined in their gap assignments, that's going to be limiting to him a little bit because he's a penetrator. It'd be like asking Geno Atkins to hold up at the point of attack rather than penetrate. It's like that's not what he's paid for.
That's what 3-4 guys are usually just,
most of the time. Yep.
They're hold the line guys. They're like, take up 2 blockers and let the linebackers flow to the ball. DBA coming in with Lee Smith is a hell of a pitcher back in the day. I would say that you're not old enough to understand what he means there, but as a St. Louis Cardinals fan, you better know what he means there. And Lee Smith was awesome. I loved Lee Smith when he came in and pitched for the Cardinals. Just a spectacular closer. Loved watching him play. Good comment there. Nice name recognition there. And I agree with Dave on here. The Falcons must get bigger in the front 7. They signed a guy that was 360 pounds last week. I think we were last Wednesday, Dave, in this show. I could probably find it somewhere where we talked about the Falcons for a 3-4. They're just lightweight. They're just lightweight up front. So they signed Anthony Rush, who goes 3.5 bills. Maybe we see him on the active roster this week. Maybe he gets waived. You never know. Signed to the practice squad, but they absolutely have to. If they're going to run a 3-4, they absolutely have to get bigger on the defensive front in the front 3, especially at that nose guard position where you've got guys that are 3.5 bills, 350 plus running that position, and the ones that are 350 plus and mobile are the scary ones, like Vita Vea over at with Tampa Bay. So appreciate the comment, Dave.
Yeah, thank you so much for the comment, Dave. We appreciate you joining us this morning to talk a little bit of Falcons football. I also did want to highlight, I know we were talking a little bit of cornerbacks earlier. I thought Isaiah Oliver had a pretty good game overall.
That was interesting. Now, I want you to talk about what you saw from him, and then I want to say why I think it was an interesting move.
He just stuck with his guy. He seemed to be competent. He's always had the skill set. 2nd-round pick from the University of Colorado, good length, boundary corner, and maybe he's the guy who needs to stick outside. I know that AJ Terrell has been injured with that concussion, but it was really a stark contrast between Isaiah Oliver out there looking competent versus Fabian Moreau, who struggled again and seemed to be a guy that has been identified as a weakness in that back 7, and teams are going against him.
So my initial thought on this was like, okay, Oliver will drop down into that spot, and I was corrected quickly on it by someone that was paying more attention than me on that one. Was that TJ Green is going to take that spot at the corner when AJ Terrell was moved out? I'm like, TJ Green was abused. He was abused at cornerback by Daniel Jones and the New York Giants, but it was between the 20s. It was between the 20s where he was getting beaten. This is a former safety. So he's got some size on him, and I don't blame him. I don't say, I'm one of those guys, like, it's not his fault that he's probably not good enough for a number 1 corner position. That's just where he is right now. But it said to me, it's like, listen, as a defense, if I'm in there, I'm like, Isaiah Oliver is playing great right now in this spot at nickel. He's playing great. Let's not F that up. Let's leave it there. Otherwise, we run the chance of moving Oliver over to a corner spot. We got weaker there because he's not as good as Terrell. And we have to fill back in for him with, maybe Jalen Hawkins, maybe TJ Green, maybe someone like that, maybe, hybrid safety corner. And we just got weaker in 2 spots now. So instead, Isaiah Oliver stepped up another notch and played a little better, and you took your lumps at corner. So I thought that was brilliant. I thought that was brilliant by Dean Peace and the defensive staff and Arthur Smith over. And hats off to Isaiah Oliver for playing that way. And I feel for TJ Green. That's not where he needs to be. And hopefully AJ Terrell for the Falcons is back healthy again this week.
And you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but it seemed like the rotation for cornerback when Terrell was healthy was Moreau and Terrell were the starting 2 cornerbacks, with Oliver being the first guy.
It started with Oliver and Moreau fighting for the other spot opposite Terrell, and then Oliver has kind of made that nickel spot his own. So, if you're going the first 3 corners right now as a nickel are supposed to be AJ Terrell, Fabian Moreau, and Isaiah Oliver. And this is one of the things we talked about at the top of the show. Why are the Falcons getting career backups as starters? It's because they don't have any money. Why don't they have any money? Because they got 20% of their money tied up in guys that aren't there anymore. And that's just as personnel guys, Nick, I usually put the blame at the feet of the general manager first. When you've got a team that's this unbalanced, this bad in a salary cap position, I'm not jumping all over Dan Quinn. Now, Dan Quinn wasn't perfect. Mike Smith wasn't perfect, but Mike Smith won more games for the Falcons in 3 or 4 years than any coach before him. We're not replacing Vince Lombardi here, Bill Belichick. And then, these are both defensive guys and they didn't have any defense. Why is that? Because your general manager is spending all his money like he's the quarterback's agent, except he's not investing in the offensive line either. He thinks he's playing 7-on-7. So I agree with the comment from earlier today from Facebook about, I think Terry Fontenot is the right guy for the job, and we will see. We'll see on that one.
Yeah, no, it'll be interesting. I think that Oliver played well. It's still a position they need to invest in. I was really not impressed with Moreau. His tackling was terrible. Also, I always get his name wrong. Tootie Mariner.
Yeah, Jacob Tuioti Mariner is one of the ones I can. I'm always scared to death to say Olamide Zaccheaus because they call him OZ. I'm like, that's why they call him OZ.
Yeah,
and Okawegbanam with the Denver Broncos. If you see me hesitate just a little bit whenever I say their names, it's because in my head I'm panicking. Oh God, I don't want to say their names.
Yeah, the linebacking core outside of Deion Jones for them is really just underwhelming to me, and that includes the edges and whatnot. So this is a team. Dante Fowler had a good game,
and I do like Foye Oluokun, but both of those guys are a little undersized. Foye Oluokun and Deion Jones play in the 215 range. Michael Walker is a second-year guy he was the highest graded guy on PFF, and I know you have to go, so there's some comments I still want to get to, and we'll find out when my views drop to 0 after you leave that everybody was here for Nick and not us and talking Falcons. But I'll stick around for a few minutes again because there's a couple questions in the chat that I want to hit, but I know you've got to get going. So Nick Kendall at Nick Kendall MHH. Spectacular on draft stuff. When we start getting into more draft things, I used to think I was pretty good at it. Nick's as good as I ever was, and hopefully I'm going to try and get back to his level now when we start talking some NFL draft stuff, which will be coming up sooner than you think. Sometime we're hitting a little bit of it already after an 0-2 start, and the college football season started. But Nick, I'll let you go, and I appreciate you being here, my friend, and I will see you tomorrow morning at Broncos for breakfast.
Yes, sir. Everyone have a good one. Enjoy the moment. Cardinals, 17 games in a row going to the playoffs. So hopefully your Braves are still in first place, right? It's
they took a big step to clinch in the East again yesterday, awesome. Beating the Phillies. So I think there's like 5 games to go, and they're up 3.5. So magic number 3. So they're in pretty good shape.
Well, I hope we can meet because Cardinals are going to have to go up against probably the Dodgers.
I'm tired of getting beat by the Cardinals. You need somebody else. I'm ready for somebody else to beat the Braves. It's always the Cardinals.
Yeah, devil magic, right? That's what they always say. The Cardinals devil magic. It's 17 in a row, really is. But we'll see you guys tomorrow. Stay safe, and good luck with the rest of the show.
All right, appreciate it, Nick. We'll see you later. So that's Nick Kendall. Nick's great, and I love having him on. I love working with him in different formats. But there's a couple of questions in here that I wanted to hit on before I let you go. Dave coming in saying some fans are panicking over rookies like Richie Grant, for example. I expected more from Richie early in the season, but then you have to remind yourself that he is a rookie. So they are bleeding him on special teams, getting his feet wet. I loved him at Senior Bowl, and I loved his coverage ability, and I loved his physicality. But that doesn't mean you know how to read a defense. Those are individual skills. Now, how can you be part of a unit? And that's where he needs to catch up. And he's behind some old vets who've been there a long time, who are there to hold the fort until some younger guys come in. So I'm certainly not going to give up on him. Jalen Mayfield is in there way too early. Avery Williams, the return man, is pretty much everything that you thought he could be when he was drafted, is maybe the best return man in the league, coming in great. Kyle Pitts, this was one of the concerns I have with drafting another receiver when we were talking about, is this a win now move? No, it's not, because it doesn't matter who you have at receiver if you can't protect Matt Ryan in the off or run the ball. And they could do neither last year. They couldn't run the ball or protect Matt Ryan, and they didn't address those issues. So another receiver doesn't help you. However, Kyle Pitts is going to be a great player in this league for a very, very long time. And when you are rebuilding, that was a pretty good pick. The one question I had for Terry Fontenot, and he would never, if I meet him in person, I'd ask him, and he would never tell me on the record, is what were you offered for that number 4 spot? What were you offered for that 4 spot? Did the San Francisco 49ers call you up and offer anything close to what they offered the Miami Dolphins, which was 3 first-round picks? Because if you turn that down, you're out of your mind. I don't think he's out of his mind. I would have been tempted to trade out of that 4 spot for what the Bears offered to move up to take Justin Fields, which was 2 first-rounders, and I think they added something else. So I would have been tempted on that because this absolutely is a Falcons rebuild. You got no money. You got a 36-year-old quarterback coming off of a 4-12 season. Your offensive line isn't very good, and you have the league's worst defense. Come on, this isn't win now. How are you going to win now with that team? You can get better schematically, and you can blood some new players, as JC says. Baptism by fire, but it's a rebuild. It absolutely is. One of the questions I had it was Dave again. So I'm going to hit Dave. I'm going to hit you again, Dave. You may have already left, so you might have to watch this again. But I do like the question. So what is your shelf life for a rookie picked beyond the first round? If they're not contributing, they're cheap, but that also means one of two things. If they're not contributing, they're also pretty easily replaceable. So you're going to get replaced by the next year's draft class. Second and third rounders are usually pretty safe unless you have, quarterbacks are different because you're expecting a high round draft pick to start. But otherwise, as you said, beyond the first round, if you're drafted down the line, you can be a backup. They're doing a pretty good job of protecting the quarterbacks these days. So most starting quarterbacks start 15, 16 games. So you can be a clipboard holder and be on a rookie contract and be cheap. Without getting replaced too much. But once you get into a position player, if they can do better than you in the next draft, you're in trouble. You're in trouble beyond the third round. So you've got to really step up and show something over the course of the next year. So unless there's any other, and JC comes in here and says trading 3 firsts for a 3rd overall is wild looking back at it. And JC, that was one of the concerns I had about the Falcons passing on the opportunity to take a quarterback of the future with the number 4 pick, with what appeared to be a deep draft class, and the number 4 pick it is god awful expensive to take a quarterback in the top 5. You think Sam Darnold? It was 3 number 2s to trade up like 2 spots, or even just switch spots. They gave up 3 second rounders. The Jets did in order to draft Sam Darnold. So when are you going to be in this position again, maybe next year, to take a quarterback this high? Because Matt Ryan's 36. This isn't saying that Matt Ryan, this isn't an indictment of Matt Ryan's ability. It's of his age. He's getting older. Not everybody's going to play until their mid-40s like Drew Brees and Tom Brady. So he's getting older. And the offensive line wasn't going to get any better. This was your chance. So my first instinct with the draft for the Falcons was trade back, accumulate picks. You're rebuilding. I don't care what you say in public. You need more players. And my second one was take a quarterback of the future, because even if you're 7-10, getting a quarterback in the teens is still tough. It's still fairly tough to do. So Jay comes in and says Trey Lance has a lot of tools. I think once Trey Lance became the number 3 guy, I think there weren't enough people high on Justin Fields or Mac Jones to trade up and give a really silly offer for that number 4 spot. At least that's what I'm hoping. Because if the Falcons turn down even 2 first rounds, a first and a couple of seconds at number 4, I think it was a mistake. But as y'all have heard me say a zillion times, if you were drafting in the top 10 of this draft, you're either going to get your quarterback of the future or a really exciting prospect. Falcons got the second one. Kyle Pitts is a really, really exciting player. So we will be back. Jay, I was looking at Jay there. Nick and I will be back tomorrow morning, 9:30 Eastern, 7:30 Mountain, 6:30 Pacific, and I might as well say Central, 8:30 Central, for Broncos for breakfast. And then we will be back on here Wednesday, Friday morning as we give a more in-depth preview of the Washington football team at Atlanta Falcons. 2 1-2 teams. Washington enters as a 1.5-point favorite over the Falcons, and I'm not surprised by that based on the teams that they have played so far. So appreciate you all being here today, and we will see you again soon, and I will see many of y'all tomorrow. And for the Falcons fans, I will see you on Friday.